Here we are in Ways and Means. We're getting started later in the day than we had originally planned, but here we are. It is Friday, April 3rd. It is a little bit after 1. We are continuing our work on H 955. Yesterday, everyone's having a really fun afternoon. And yesterday we did an initial walkthrough with Beth St. James. Folks asked clarifying questions, but we didn't get into some of the underlying theories and intent. And so I asked Representative Conlin to come and share some of the committee's big picture thinking. And then if anyone has sort of questions about where intent was, I thought it'd be helpful for us to ask Peter rather than the staff team. Floor is yours if there's anything you want to say.
Well, I think I covered most of it this morning in the caucus of the whole. I guess I will just sort of emphasize sort of the pathway here was really based on, frankly, a lot of my own time traveling to all corners of the state with the Commission on the Future of Public Education, thousands of responses we received from Vermonters. Get into the building here. We had the redistricting task force report. And then we had really the members and the committee all sort of providing the input and sort of the politically plausible pathway, which got us to where we are, which is a departure from forced mergers and toward a voluntary process, and building on the redistricting task force recommendation, mandatory cooperative education service areas as a way to quickly move towards scale and savings.
I can ask a question if no one else has one, but anyway. Wow, look at you all. Okay. One of the pieces of Act 73 and the recommendations to the task force was about brand list and having sort of similar grand lists from district to district. And I know that the seesaws have advised boundary areas to be brokered.
I'm going to interrupt you right there.
Yes.
So the districts have advised boundaries to be brokered.
Thank you.
CISA boundaries are in statute.
Thank you.
And there are 7 CISAs.
Okay. And so underneath this seesaw, there's the boundaries.
Yes. The guidance.
Thank you. What's the special term?
The guidance maps or the guidance groupings.
Okay.
So with groupings.
The guidance groupings.
Yep.
When you all were coming up with those guidance groupings.
We did not think about brand lists, if that's where you're going with it.
Okay. And I know that if a group decides not to become a district, they are then sort of default to current law and their ability to seek other districts. And I'm just I'm thinking about ways we can sort of find ways to reinsert people considering socioeconomic diversity and grand list consistency through that process. And I don't want to like mess up a thing you guys already thought a lot about and decided against.
No, so we did not think about grand list.
Okay.
And consistency. We thought about geographic proximity, thought a lot about we thought a lot about regional high schools and middle schools and trying to build around that. We also, one of the reasons why we made it guidance and flexible and all of that is because we respected supervisory union lines. But of course, within a supervisory union in many places, you've got numerous school districts who could actually move in a different direction outside of that grouping. You think of the central Vermont area where we've got a whole number of high schools that in an ideal world have had so much declining enrollment that they could be combined into one. But for example, one of the smaller high schools on the outskirts is in a different supervisory union. However, they would probably tend to be looking toward the capital region. So that's just an area as an example of why we built in the flexibility.
Thank you. Yeah, Representative Good.
I was looking over, section 17, so that's, seems to be where all the money is. I don't know what the total is, looks like 210,000 for study committee reimbursement, the $10,000 for each, study committee participation, 442,000, anyway. Did you folks consider where that money's coming from? Is that part of the 4 million that was initially laid out for
Yes.
73?
Yes.
Okay, so that's already supposedly still there?
Yes, yeah, in this year's, and you could probably talk with JFO to give better clarity on this. But in the budget this year, there's very clear language about appropriations being used for exactly this kind of work.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so. So thinking about the CSED and the one that exists now, Vermont Learning Collaborative, and how that is the designee to be the keeper of all efforts here. But naturally, that CISA would really include Hartford.
Yes.
Did you discuss that after this entity is set up and it could then facilitate the creation of the other CISAs, then it might be able to be adjusted in boundary to include?
Okay, so thank you. We actually discussed this a lot because we kept wanting to include Hartford. But because it is a currently existing CISA, if we were to change its currently existing boundary, it would have to be recreated as a new CISA. So we figured that better to sort of orphan Hartford a little bit, and then that currently existing Vermont Learning Collaborative can include it at a later date when it self sort of rejiggers its boundary.
That was really what you were thinking, and that it would make
Yes.
sense to do that once everything else is up and running.
That's right, because we don't want to disrupt the currently existing Vermont Learning Collaborative because of their role in sort of future work.
I had a follow-up question on the same thing, because that just jumped out at me too, because, and I assume the way the seesaws are structured and the way you envision it. I mean, a lot of the Southeast students are actually placed in the Hartford specialized settings. So I assume you can contract outside the seesaw for specialized settings in the transition until such time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you probably could answer the question better than I can, and how CISAs operate, but what's really great about the CISA model is that you can work out, you can color outside the lines, not necessarily from a governance point of view, but from service offering view.
That's a hub. That's a real hub for the whole.
Yeah.
Just to be really focused on that particular CISA, there's $50,000 for all the other 6, except for that one in terms of, helping to hire the executive director and that kind of stuff. So even though they've incurred some of those expenses, doesn't it make sense to give them some kind of financial incentive to manage the project?
Well, one thing we have them managing the facilitators. These are the merger study committee facilitators. And part of the budget for that is about $32,000 for them for that overhead. But I hear what you're saying. That was not a request that was made. They're very enthusiastic about spreading what they do across the state. We did not hear that. They did not say, hey, could you reimburse us since we already did this?
I have a very specific question about Chittenden County. It looks like in the proposed merger study groups, some districts that are upscale, that are sort of in the boundaries, are asked to go and look at mergers with other districts, and others are left on their own.
Yeah.
What was the thought process behind which ones were?
Yes. Some of it had to do with, so the ones where this part was much more art than science. The ones that are at scale, they're at scale and geographically large. So we thought that would be sort of trickier. I think that there would be probably no objection. I mean, first of all, we allow the flexibility. We would hope the conversation would take place. But sort of the geographic concentration of Winooski, Burlington, South Burlington is a very small geographic area, whereas the larger districts of CVSD and Mount Mansfield are big geographically as well as at scale from a student point of view.
Thank you. I think you said, Peter, that the Representative Collins is trying to frame old school. the CSAs will manage the facilitators? Is that what you said?
What I said was the currently existing CISA.
Yeah.
Which is the Vermont Learning Collaborative.
Yeah.
Has offered to be, to manage the facilitators, with the goal being that, sort of by using this entity, that the work can get done faster than, going through a state
Clarify,
appropriation.
sorry, what you mean by manage?
Well, so they would be in charge of hiring, training, and sort of deploying the facilitators statewide. The one currently existing Vermont Learning Collaborative.
Statewide obligation.
Yeah.
Thank
Representative Odie? Holcomb?
So you can, if you're a single district, hire facilitators, how do you do that?
But you wouldn't have to hire the facilitator.
I mean,
Facilitator would come to you and
Hired by-
you could, yes,
Hired by Vermont Learning Cooperative.
yes, absolutely.
But basically, you're allowed to.
We want the facilitators and we
Services.
really want them to be flexible and open, which they will be, because their job is to try to create newer, larger districts. So that if CVSD and Mount Mansfield said we really could combine, that would be facilitated by a facilitator.
I personally just want to thank you for looking at special ed, particularly as a first place to start, because we have so many issues right now. It seems like a place we could get huge benefit pretty quickly. So I really think that's positive.
I would just say to that the current Vermont Learning Collaborative, that has been their focus, and they are already saving people money. So it's really a proven concept.
Yeah. And then I wondered, this was a huge lift and you spent a tremendous amount of time on the potential district boundaries, CSAs and so forth. If you had had another week, are there things that you didn't get to, you wish you'd got?
That's a really great question. I think we could have debated the suggested groupings for the next 3 years.
I should say other than that.
But at a certain point, we sort of had to just stop and provide, and that's why we provided the flexibility. We probably could have spent more time on perhaps some of the tweaking of is 50,000 the right amount? We checked with the current existing CISA about, really what would a consulting amount be? We checked in with people who actually did some of this work in Act 46. We checked in with just basic consultants saying, is this the right number? So we could have done perhaps more work there, but I think we would have just done a lot of circling around the same thing over and over again.
Can we talk about timing?
Yeah.
Because I think if it became effective July 1st, right, 2026, the act.
Yeah.
But then I think there was a hiring within a certain period of time for the main facilitator, by October 15th, like that. So the idea, what we were talking about with one particular school district last week, maybe it was this week, was about the amount of time it took for their study committee to look at 2 different school districts and the time it took to actually get to the point where the voters could vote on it. And that was about 18 months. I think in your timeline, it's a year.
That's right.
So how, was that 18 months too long? How was?
No, when it came to Act 46, Act 46 was brand new. Nobody had gone through this in the way prescribed under Act 46. We've now been through this. And I guess it is ambitious, but the hope would be that we have just a large cohort of superintendents and school board people, retired and currently active, who've been through this. And so hopefully a year is sufficient to get to that point.
Based on experience of everyone.
Yeah. And the whole process to come up with everything, it takes until election day, minus the whatever time you need to warn something, November 7th, 2028.
We took a little bit of testimony about what encouraged mergers and what didn't encourage mergers under Act 46, but I imagine that you took more testimony about that than we did. So do you have any?
We did not get into incentives and what are incentives, what works as incentives and what doesn't. I can tell you that in the Act 46 mergers, the incentives probably made people move faster, but I think they would have made the same decision because most of the mergers in Act 46 were supervisory unions where everybody was feeding into a unified union high school. So they were already in, like, for at least 4 grades, if not 6 grades, were already a single district. And they had high functioning supervisory unions. So they were easier to merge. So I think they would have merged anyway. And I think they also said, if we don't merge, we're going to be forced. So let's just take the money, which is an incentive sort of, I'm not sure it was needed, but it certainly made people move faster. I mean, anytime you sort of offer it, it can help. But I've heard people say, nope, didn't do any good because we weren't going to do it. And they ended up being forced and they lost out on the 10-cent, 8-cent, merger incentives, tax breaks.
I know that the CISOs obviously were a major recommendation of redistricting task force. One of the other major recommendations was regional middle and high schools. Was there any discussion of where those regional and middle high schools might naturally be located, or how many, or any of that thinking?
I mean, I think the redistricting task force identified those areas pretty clearly, and there are probably others as well, and we thought about that within our groupings. So you can see, sort of Rutland City and out, Rutland High School and out is sort of one of the groupings because we've got, Proctor, Pulteney, West Rutland, Fairhaven, all small high schools. Capital Region we just talked about, and then this is we spent a lot of time discussing the Northeast Kingdom and dividing things, and there's talks going on up there because Newport really needs to replace its high school, or North Country. Lake Region would be the right fit to mix with them, but Lake Region is also having conversations with Hazen, so it got a little. We said, all right, let's just provide a lot of flexibility in the work of the facilitator to bring the right groups together. But yes, but with a lot of that was really with thought around regional high schools. And I would say the same thing in the Woodstock Hartford area, where it is very clear Woodstock Union High School needs a major rebuild. But Hartford, with PCB problems and other issues, also is staring down the barrel of that as well.
It's the window of opportunity for the tax incentives.
Well, we didn't provide any tax incentives in ours, but with Act 46,
Oh, Act 46.
Act 46 had them if you were basically an early adopter.
We heard a funny thing in testimony this week about that districts that had received it, when it went away, when it started to phase out, the folks in that district experienced that as a tax increase.
Yes.
Which makes so much sense if you're a normal person just looking at your tax bill.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, it was a helpful piece of insight.
Yeah, it's just like buying down tax rates, right? You got to, as you lose that incentive, you got to make up for it in taxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it can be worded as a freeze. Freeze it. Freeze it at that, and then it's unfrozen. Just thought I should say that.
Then who picks up the other side of the balloon when you freeze?
Yeah, I didn't-
part of it?
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not saying it's
good for you.
frozen, but that might help people realize it's frozen and that it's gonna go up.
Peter, would you mind just touching on pre-K? We spent a lot of time talking about it, and then it went to Human Services, and now it's in here as a study, and I was just wondering what the discussion.
So I would say it's probably best to hear from the folks from Human Services. That was language that came over to us. And we talked with them a little bit about what they were hoping from the study. We continue to include it. And really, frankly, to let you folks have questions about it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much. Great questions, really.
Yeah, Rebecca.
Are there other, there's still other pieces that are outside this that are germane to implementation, successful implementation. Are there any other things that you think it's worth us taking a look at to make sure that we're supporting successful implementation?
It's really the two that come to mind. I'm sure the two that you're talking about is that, where is there a role for some sort of incentive? Is there a role for, school construction to sort of drive the same policy in the same direction? We've got, I guess we're providing, our bill provides sort of the startup and logistical support to the extent that we felt we could do. I'm not sure I have anything beyond that.
I guess I'm thinking, we're rolling out class sizes, we're rolling out new graduation requirements at the same time they're all going through the merger process. Is there anything that we need to be doing to just sort of support that transition or implementation? Do you think they have the clarity around?
That's a great question for the field. It's interesting with the class size minimums. It's a 3-year implementation, yet school districts are already acting on it. So I think that they are seeing what's ahead in the future, and I really hope this is what drives mergers, is that they're seeing what's ahead in the future, perhaps foundation formula, and they're acting on it to sort of further that effort. I'm a little blank right now with an answer to that. Yeah.
And do you expect those class size requirements to be the same in all settings that are publicly funded?
I would say that I feel that what we passed in Act 73 is pretty clear that it was same rules.
Lift and shift.
Yeah.
Same rules.
Could you talk,
That was certainly the intent.
in the foundation formula, could you just share the committee's approach to pushing that out the way that?
So, if you look at how we have it timelined out with merger votes on election day 2028, that is a period in which school board, currently existing districts are already well into the budgeting process. So you can't really monkey wrench that, so that then you are moving that ahead a year as a result. And I think as you sort of walk through it, you end up with the 2030 that you have in here.
Fiscal year 2030 or
Says.
Thank you.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy
Thank you very
Friday.
much. Great to visit with you.
Hope you rest well this weekend. So let's spend the next hour going back into the bill with Beth. And folks are now welcome to ask non-technical questions. Once Beth settles in and such. And then what I'm imagining is before we are together again, we'll try to put all of the other language together. So we're looking at it all in one place. How are you? I would wonder, Madam Chair, when are we planning to vote this bill out? And the answer is, gosh, committee, I don't know, but I'm hoping to figure it out by Monday.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and I'm not asking that right now. I just want to offer a clarifying question, something I said yesterday about Gauss's ring.
What?
Gauss's
Ah,
ring,
yes.
it's a tool, I guess you could say, in electrical analysis, simple stuff from high school, that allows you to isolate part of the diagrammatic problem of what you're trying to solve from exterior stuff. And one of the things that we don't get into in this committee is school choice. And that's someone else's bailiwick. As we work through whatever we do, we have to sort of, at least implicitly within our community, agree to what we're talking about and what we're not, because there's a lot of things that they get tangled up with each other continuously when we talk with people outside the room, outside the building. And we would love to solve school choice, but I think it's going to require outside conversations to get to that. That's just the point. So thank you for listening in. And I go on tangents once in a while, and I hope that sometimes they're helpful. Thank you. That's all. Done.
Thank you. And I think we all go on tangents sometimes.
Pardon?
I think we all go on tangents sometimes.
Okay, good. But thank you, Madam Chair.
No, I think
It's probably not for this time, but the question that you asked to start with, how we are going to make grand list equality.
yes.
It's very, I've
Mhm.
been thinking about it.
Okay. Me too. So let's keep on thinking about that one. Beth, can we just essentially go through the bill again?
Perfect.
That folks, we have a single hour left in our day together.
St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. H 955 as introduced. Do you want to start with the intent language? Okay. Do you want me to walk through it again, or do you want to take the lead on discussion on each section?
I can walk through it again. Thank you. I'm sorry. Can you go through the part about the intent? I'm just kidding. That part was a joke. Sorry.
So legislative intent, section 1, subsection A is taken directly from Act 73 to ensure each student is provided substantially equal educational opportunities that will prepare the student to thrive in a 21st century world. It is the intent of the General Assembly to work strategically, intentionally, and thoughtfully to ensure that each incremental change made to Vermont's public education system provides strength and support to its only constitutionally required governmental service. Subsection B, the General Assembly recognizes that Vermont schools anchor local economies and community identity, connecting young people to their homes while supporting workforce development and long-term stability, and that different regions of Vermont have different needs, challenges, and opportunities. Further, it is the intent of the General Assembly to ensure that local voice and community input retain an important role in Vermont's evolving education landscape. New reader assistance heading, cooperative educational service areas. Section 2 is the amendment to all of chapter 10 in Title 16, which was formerly the BOCES chapter. Now this is the Seesaw chapter. I'm just gonna scroll until we get to the big substantive changes.
Just one clarifying question. Seesaw, seesaw.
Depends on who you ask. I have been saying seesaw because it is easier for me.
Okay.
I think other people are saying seesaw.
Or Sessa.
This is beyond my scope of practice.
You've probably seen it written more than anyone, so.
Well, there's no W at the end,
Okay, all right.
That's right.
but seesaw rolls off the tongue easier for me.
Okay.
So it shall be what I say until you correct me.
Okay.
So definition for seesaw. An association of supervisory unions created pursuant to this chapter to deliver shared programs and services to complement the educational programs of member SUs in a cost-effective manner. Seesaw shall be a body politic and corporate with the powers and duties afforded it under this chapter. I'm on page 4, section 603. This is where subsection A is where, excuse me, the supervisory unions are arranged into the seesaws. Do you want to go into detail about the membership?
I was wondering in that first paragraph on 603, why all the strikeouts was just found not to be.
So if you look at, if we read through the strikeouts, it says when boards of 2 or more supervisory unions vote to explore the advisability of entering into a written agreement, all of that language is for the voluntary process of forming a seesaw. And you've taken the voluntariness off the table by creating them in statute.
Got it, thank you.
I'm wondering, does this mean, let's say you have trucks for your district and your trucks say Winooski School District. Do you have to now change the name on the truck to?
Seesaws are not governing units.
That's right. Okay.
They're a repository for programming should you choose to take advantage of it.
That's right.
You have to be a member, but you do not have to use their services.
Any of their services.
Correct. Okay. With the exception of the facilitator that is built into this bill.
And do they have to offer any particular services?
Yes. So if we scroll through the membership. Bylaws. So you can see their bylaws. It's very open-ended. The programs or services offered by the Seesaw. So that contemplates that there is a world in which those offerings are going to be different for each seesaw. Then if we jump to section 604 on page 13, line 11, the powers of seesaws. They have the power to provide educational programs, services, facilities, and professional and other staff that in its discretion best serve the needs of its members, including professional development, curriculum coordination, development, and transportation. That's all suggestion.
Mhm.
And then on line 20, following law is not a suggestion. I have to follow the law on line 17 through 20. Then when you look at line 20,
Thank you.
at a minimum, a CISA shall offer the services in the following areas to its members. But it's just offer. There's nothing in here that requires members to then purchase those services, use those services, avail themselves of those services.
Is it above this part?
No, it's on this.
Okay, let's just wait, if you could wait one second.
So special education, including implementation and maintenance of tiered systems of support and the provision of low incidence, high cost services, business and administrative services, and union school district creation, consultation, and facilitation.
So, I appreciate the clarity around they may offer. What cooperative services in other states do is often say, if you use the CSUP for the service or the CSUP equivalent for the service, you don't provide it at the supervisory level. So they build in protections against redundancy. And I know when Vermont moved special ed to the supervisory unit level, there was some effort to make clear that supervisory services, including removed staff, for special ed to the SU level. So I wondered if there was some parallel here.
So nothing in this bill changes the responsibility, changes Vermont, who is designated in Vermont as an LEA. And it does not change the fact that the supervisory union remains responsible for the provision of special education services. It allows CSAs through their bylaws to decide what services they're going to offer with the exceptions of those and the financial terms and conditions of membership. It does not speak to, if you purchase this service from us, then you are no longer responsible for providing it. I think practically my understanding of the way this works is it may be that you are the CSA is providing, you have a contract to provide a service. It's still your responsibility to provide that service.
Right.
And you are doing that through purchasing that service through CSA. It could be that the CSA is operating its own program. And so if it's special education, the LEA is still at the end of the day going to be responsible for the provision of that service. How it obtains that service could depend on a number of different things, whether it's obtaining it through the CSA, whether it's hiring its own special educators, et cetera. I don't think that this specifies any specifics as to redundancy, because the natural business processes involved would perhaps alleviate that.
So that was helpful. And I think the longer term, that may be something to really watch. Let me take it out of special ed because it's not, you do retain the LEA at the district, the governing entity. But for example, professional development, let's say you're working on curriculum at the CSA level. If you contract with the CSA and the district also maintains a local curriculum coordinator, then you may have duplication of service. And that was my question. And at some point, the state does have a vested interest if you are regionalizing and truly regionalizing around service. And that's why other states build in protections to prevent duplication. So just a thought to put out there.
And business services are not required.
They are.
Sorry, we were in suggested, not required. Okay.
So if and when you move to a place where you would like business services or admin services to be run only through CSAs, we would then have to amend all of the statutes where those responsibilities live elsewhere.
Hard to do that until they're set up.
Indeed.
Right. Well, it also could just be that if you contract for a specific, I mean, I'm trying to think of an example, but stranger things have happened. You know, someone could have a e-finance system at the seesaw level, it's doing all of their stuff, but then also trying to maintain local books, because we've had districts do that.
And that might, if that is indeed where we're intending to move, that might be a helpful thing to put in the intent section. One thing that I'm sitting with and trying to figure out in the context of all this is if and when financial resources are saved by using the seesaw, or by merging under our existing finance structure, that savings is generally in districts rolled into providing a new service, rather than tax relief. And that might, if the foundation formula is sort of at a date certain, that might be a problem solved, that the problem that doesn't need solving. It might be a problem that doesn't need solving regardless, if our goal is to improve services and opportunities only. But it's an interesting piece of the puzzle that I'm curious about. Fun to name that. Yeah.
Follow up to?
Yeah.
So in other words, it wouldn't really reduce cost of the whole system. It would just make it able to serve more needs. And since one of the things we're talking about is maybe having the system cost less, that's going to be.
And if we do have this date certain in here where we are switching from our existing financing system to a new one, then that might be a problem that does not need solving. I don't know. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, one of the things that Rebecca set out, Representative Holcomb set out yesterday on steps necessary, I don't remember what your title was. But pointed out different financial systems in different schools. Would Assessa help facilitate getting all the finance directors on the same page? Is that something that somebody might contract for?
I would say that that is contemplated in the business and administrative services offering.
Okay, thank you. Perfect clarification.
Keep going?
Mhm.
Okay. That's the last big,
Sorry, no, I do have a minor brainstorm, which maybe I shouldn't say out loud, but there is something about regional assessment districts and seesaws that's interesting.
Can you say a little bit more about the conversation?
Yeah.
But if you knew that 15,033 plus whatever inflationary, because we set that amount.
And all the categorical grants.
But if you knew that that is what you're going to be getting.
Mhm.
And you know that you now just saved, let's say, $10,000. I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Then you could say, well, we aren't going to provide more, we're going to try to cut to get to 15,000.
Mhm.
But if that's not explicit, there's no conversation about that. And we may end up, do we need to say, just be aware that if you're heading toward foundation amount, be aware this is what it's going to look like, that foundation amount. And so consider what you want to do with your savings as you move toward it. Do we need to say that?
I don't know, and I do, one thing that feels very clear to me through this whole process is that school business managers and superintendents are smarter than most of us in here in the legislature at this stuff particularly, maybe generally, but I mean, in the context of all this stuff. And so, I don't know what that means for that, but that just feels clear to me on a Friday afternoon. Yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah, I think that, just want to go back to something Charlie said a while ago, because I think the reason the Southeast one is so interesting is it was driven out of necessity. And what they're finding is more consistent service plans, being able to actually get expertise to do consistent evaluations. It's actually lowering costs in the system progressively over time, which means we're going to have to reassess those numbers then, because they may look different. If we are successful with CSAs, we may address some of the structural challenges that we have. and the commissions at the same time.
And the foundation formula is designed to be reassessed
I know.
regular. Yeah.
Then maybe we need to say, we'd like to hear what your savings are each year. Because otherwise, how are we going to,
It's, I think you, but
well, like, that's, I feel like I hear you saying, you're structurally bringing your costs down. And we're gonna consider that moving forward then.
I think that's what the cost factor, I think, what I'm saying is a little different, and I think what the chair is saying is that we're gonna have to reevaluate the numbers as we go. But I think if we start asking districts to report every single savings they make, it's giving them a hell of a lot of paperwork, it doesn't actually add value to anyone.
Okay. So
And the formula is designed to be reevaluated every 5 years. Not by legislators, but by experts.
you'll be able to somehow figure out in the data.
Yes.
All right,
Good. Back to you, Beth,
off my.
or not.
Yeah, no, I think.
No, for Beth, so where you are right now, the only position that's contemplated in the CISA is the executive director.
It's the only requirement, so shall employ an executive director. It's silent as to whether or not there are other employees. But the bill, the language in current law and then amended in this bill does allow for CISA employees to be members of bargaining units and healthcare and teachers in municipal retirement. So it does contemplate that there would be employees.
So in the bargaining unit,
Which bargaining unit? Why wouldn't they be one of your people not in the bargaining unit? We have administrators, we have teachers, we have personal service contracts. I don't see that we can tell the school district where.
So these would not be employees of the school district. These would be employees of the CISA.
Yeah.
And so all the law does is the statute that allows for teachers to bargain and for support staff to bargain. It inserts CISA's employees in there as well. And then that is the end of my expertise on labor law. But you have, the beauty of all of this is you have a CISA that's up and running. So if you have questions about how the law is being executed, we don't have to guess. We actually have folks who can come in and talk to us about how they are doing it. Okay, so that was the last big substantive change in the CISA statutes. Everything else that I'm scrolling through is just the name change from BOCES to CISA. So you can see right here, section 607, employment. CISA shall be considered a public employer and may employ personnel, including educators, to carry out the purposes and functions of the board. They have to be, there's licensure requirements. They are eligible for teachers retirement system, municipal employees retirement system. There's your labor law references, and then healthcare. Yep. Section 4. So section 3 is a repeal of a report back to you all. The report back required AOE to survey the field in 2028 and report back to you all on how many CISAs have formed, but that's a moot point now because you have created them all. Section 4 is an amendment to the current startup grant program. So CISAs are eligible for a one-time grant, startup grant. Current law is $10,000. This bill bumps it up to a $15,000 grant to be used by startup costs. AOE, there's a current appropriation of $70,000. I believe AOE still has $60,000 because there's only been one BOCES/CISA, and you have carry forward language in here. And then you're adding an extra $30,000 to account for the extra $5,000 you're adding to the base grant. And that is for startup costs. And so you're only calculating startup costs for 6 CISAs because one is already operational. And then what I'm about to scroll through are conforming amendments to everywhere else in the VSAs. We see the word BOCES or Boards of Educational Cooperative Services and changing that to CSAW. So you can see there's quite a few places. Then we get to section 12 on page 25, line 16. Seesaw transition. Within 30 days following the passage of this act, each member SU board of each Seesaw created in section 603 subsection A shall appoint a person to serve on the board of directors of the applicable Seesaw pursuant to what the law says. And then within 45 days following the passage of this act, the superintendent of the SU with the highest aggregate average daily membership of each Seesaw calls the first meeting.
I love that particular detail for whatever reason. It just seems like
How else
to make a
are we gonna
decision
pick?
and it was a
How
well
else are we gonna
decision.
pick? They pick a chair, they elect other necessary officers, and they're off to the races. And then we have this little bit of language here that says the articles of agreement of the VTLC in effect on June 30th, 2026 shall serve as the operating agreement of VTLC unless and until amended, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel and do anything differently now that you have mandated their existence. Okay. We're getting out of the Seesaw reader assistance heading and we're going into Union School District exploration and formation, but Seesaws are still relevant. So on or before October 1st, 2026, VTLC shall employ or contract for the services of 7 Union School District formation facilitators who shall be responsible for organizing and facilitating study committees to study the advisability of forming a unified union school district. They're also supposed to hire 1 lead facilitator who, in addition to facilitating study committees as necessary, oversees those 7 facilitators. Facilitators are required to have knowledge of and experience working in Vermont's public education system. And VTLC is required to assign 1 facilitator to each Seesaw membership region. So there are 7 Seesaws, 7 membership regions. So those facilitators would each be assigned to 1 Seesaw, and then you would have the 1 lead that's overseeing everything. Study committees. 2 things have to happen on or before December 1st, 2026. The first is that the facilitators form the study committees. And they do that by working within their assigned Seesaw member region, consulting with the school boards within that member region, using the criteria we're about to walk through, and using the suggested school district groupings contained in section 14 as guidance. So some of the criteria that the facilitators are supposed to take into account is that total average daily membership of the school districts forming a study committee shall be a minimum of 2,000 students as practical. School districts are required to be contiguous, and school districts on the same study committee may be members of different SUs.
This is a spot where we might want to pull some of the original guidance to the Act 73 task force in that is relevant to tax policy. My understanding is that laundry list felt a little too long, and so to be judicious with it, but we might need some of it to have our supplemental spending work.
Do you want to pull that up now or just I made a note of it? Okay.
I also have a note of it, just wanted to.
It was too long.
Yeah.
And not consistent. It was not.
Okay, the second thing that needs to happen on or before December 1st, 2026 is that each study committee has to hold its first meeting. Subdivision 2, notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, a school district is required to participate in the study committee it is assigned to by the facilitator.
If I don't want to go.
You asked that yesterday.
Still figures.
You know, in my previous life, I worked in the enforcement side of things. And I would be happy to help you design some enforcement mechanism if you would like.
I think the most basic ones, if you're not at the table, you're on the table.
It's a really good question.
You're gonna get a report back on sometime, I think February 1st of 2027, with the membership of the study committees and the status of those study committees. So if you have a whole host of folks who are refusing to come to the table, maybe we'll be having this enforcement conversation next year.
Or you either show up or you pay the bill for the.
Okay, so you have to show up to the table, but it does not mandate any particular, this bill does not mandate any particular outcome. So a study committee formed pursuant to this section is required to follow current law, Chapter 11, the Union School District Formation Exploration Process. And then under subdivision 3 is a series of requirements that either enhance Chapter 11 or deviate from Chapter 11. So a study committee formed pursuant to this section may identify necessary or advisable school districts. Those are defined terms in Chapter 11 that are not members of the study committee or are not members of the CSAW or both, and shall work with the applicable facilitator or facilitators to adjust study committee membership as necessary. Notwithstanding current law related to study committee budgets, a study committee, and I should say, I hope it's clear, we use the term study committee, right, when we're talking about summer study committees. This is an actual legal term in Chapter 11 and Title 16, the study committee to form, to explore the exploration of a union school district.
Can you help me understand something about that? Because it doesn't feel weighty, just like as a word, but I think partly because we are making these legislative study committees and sometimes they do things and sometimes they don't. We all have our own perspective on that. And I understand it is a technical term in the context of education. Steve, is your experience that like it is also a very meaningful term to the field? And maybe that's a better question for Erin, or I understand that it's part of, like, it was a big part of Act 46. I understand it's a big part of the statutes.
My understanding is that the term, so in 2022, you all overhauled this chapter. And my understanding is that when union school districts, the concept of them came online in the 60s. That was the term that they started with. It has carried through.
Because, and I know you didn't walk in to be called on, but you did walk in. I know you came with your students. Yes. Do you mind answering that question?
I think I mostly defer to, ledge counsel, and the discussion did come up in our committee a little bit, and it seems like probably what you call it doesn't matter so much as what it does. And so I think that's where we're like, well, that's what's in law, and what really matters is what's happening, the name. I think it feels.
Is it meaningful
I
term
know
for
it
the
feels
field?
one, I
Yeah.
can see how it feels one way, and again, this did come up in our committee, but it's more what actually is being required and what can come of it that matters than the name, so didn't really get much emphasis.
And for the field, is it a meaningful term?
I don't know if I can answer that.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Back to you.
We're on page 28, line 4, subdivision 3B. So notwithstanding current law related to study committee budgets, this bill says that the study committee formed pursuant to this section is going to be funded through an appropriation you give them. And if they want to spend more than that, then they can revert to current law and follow that process.
Will you remind us that again?
Yes. So both membership and how much you owe for the budget for the study committee is apportioned to each member school district on the study committee according to ADM, so proportional to your student count. Current law requires that if you're, and the study committee comes up with the budget, like they literally decide how much money they need to do their work. If that budget is less than $50,000, they can just make that decision and they get the money they need from their member school districts. If it is more than 50,000, it has to go to the voters of the member school districts. So General Assembly is going to give you money and a facilitator. If you need more than the money, then you revert to current law. So if you decide that it's 25K, you wouldn't have to go to the voters.
And when you revert to current law, and let's say you wanted another $100,000 and it goes to a vote of the member districts, is it a separate ballot item? Is it just included in the regular? Look at this, thank you.
If the proposed budget established in section 706 of this chapter exceeds $50,000, then subject to provisions of that section, the board of each potentially participating school district warns the district voters to meet in an annual special school district meeting to vote on whether to appropriate the funds necessary to support the district's financial share of study committee costs. The meeting in each school district shall be warned for the same date. The warning in each school district shall contain an identical article in substantially the following form. There's the warning. If it is in the affirmative in 2 or more districts, then the boards of the affirming school district shall appoint a study committee consisting of the number of persons, yada, yada, yada. At least one current board member from each participating school district shall be appointed to the study committee.
It's anticipated to be a special meeting.
It's an annual or special meeting.
I mean, a special meeting costs more than $50,000 sometimes. Okay. I think it might make sense to increase that limit a little bit. I mean,
The 50,000.
yeah, I mean, every district kicking in an extra is certainly like not worth a whole bunch of people voting on if it's possible within their existing budget. There's a question of if they need to expand their existing budget, but most budgets have some room for extra meetings, administrative things. So it just,
Absolutely agree.
And we're already seating the study committees with $10,000 each
Yes, and the facilitator.
and a facilitator, right?
Mhm. I will make a note.
also noting, thank you.
Is that 10,000, is that envisioned to include all administrative support necessary for the committee to conduct?
What a great question. The honest answer is I don't know. However, current law requires the staff of the SUs to provide administrative assistance to the study committee and requires the secretary to cooperate and authorize agency staff to provide technical assistance.
To the degree they have it available.
Sure. I mean, that's not what the law says, but yes.
No. Yeah.
It's got $4 million.
There are many places within this timeline that one entity is responsible for doing something, and there could be a bottleneck.
Okay.
So this is one of those areas.
Thank you.
They'll have legal fees, I assume.
I think there is a step, we should revisit the language in the budget because I think there's a separate available for legal fees.
Okay, budget. Moving to C. This is middle and regional high schools. So in addition to everything they're supposed to study under current law, the study committees are also required to explore the advisability and feasibility of a contemplated new unified union school district operating a regional, middle, or high school or both. And a regional, middle, or high school is not defined anywhere. So this says that a regional, middle, or high school contemplated pursuant to the section shall offer resident students increased educational opportunities and access to CTE.
Is it a high school district or a high school? It's the building.
It's the building.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we're in subdivision D, and subdivision D is all about if a school district if the study committee finds it advisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district. then they are required under current law to come up with a final report and proposed articles of agreement. They're still required to do that here. But their final report has to have some extra information in it, including an analysis of the educational advantages and disadvantages likely to result from the formation of the proposed unified union school district, the financial advantages and disadvantages likely to result from the formation of the proposed unified union school district, the likely operational and financial viability and sustainability of the proposed new unified union school district, and any other advantages or disadvantages of formation of the proposed unified union school district, including any advantages or disadvantages to the students and taxpayers of the region and the state. So that all needs to be, so study committee says, yes, we're going to go move ahead with the formation of a new unified union school district. They've got to come up with proposed articles of agreement. That's in section 708 of current law, and a final report that includes all of this analysis. If a study committee formed pursuant to this section, now subdivision E is about if a study committee determines that it is inadvisable to propose formation. Before the study committee dissolves, they are also required to prepare a report with the following details: the names of the school districts participating in the study committee and whether participation was formal or informal, an analysis of the strengths and challenges of the current structures of all necessary and advisable school districts, the reasons why formation of a new unified union school district would be inadvisable with specific references to any state law or rule the study committee found to be an impediment to the formation of a unified union school district, with a specific analysis of why such rule or law was an impediment. And if the decision of the study committee was not unanimous, an analysis of the minority view outlining the ways in which the unified union school district would have promoted the state policy in section 701 of this chapter.
Yeah, could you go up just a little bit?
Mhm.
The study will name the school districts that participated in, or did or didn't. What if people within the CESA area
Mhm.
wanna include some other people in as participants? How do we accommodate that?
So you have language that allows the facilitator to adjust study committee membership if once you get underway, you realize, oh, this is impossible without you, and you agree that it's also impossible. However, there's also language that we haven't gotten to yet that says, if you get together and the facilitator is not willing to change membership,
Yeah.
you can just dissolve and go on your merry way and form your own study committee with
Great.
whoever you think.
Thank you, that explains it. Basis.
If you don't form a thing and you have to write a report and it says what laws kept you from being able to do this, is there a sort of flip side, what laws would help? What you think would have helped if they didn't?
I think this is meant to
Both things?
yes. So this is the impediment, and we can certainly add language. I think the specific analysis of why the ruler law was an impediment was meant to get at this is what's holding us back. We can certainly put in a line there that asks for suggestions on how to change the law.
I was thinking more like what would help in the future. Not what held you back, but like what would have moved you forward.
I think in some ways it has the potential to be the same thing.
Agreed.
We can certainly add that, yes. Making a note. And then at the end, there is a final report when this is all wrapped up from the lead facilitator, and it asks for specific feedback on certain issues and how they impacted. So you may also get feedback there, but I've made a note of the what would have moved you forward concept. Okay, so the study committee that determines it's inadvisable on page 30 now, line 5. It's inadvisable to form a union school district They have to transmit that report to the boards of the participating school districts, the secretary, the state board, and the facilitator who's assisting them. And here's that language that says you can dissolve and go on your merry way. Members of a study committee that determines it is inadvisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district may form a new study committee and may pursue any union school district formation option available under Chapter 11 after the study committee members vote to dissolve the study committee form pursuant to this section. On or before December 1st, 2027, all study committees are required to complete their final reports and transmit those final reports along with proposed articles of agreement as applicable to the school board of each school district that the report identifies as necessary or advisable. If it was an advisable determination, or to the participating school groups if it was an inadvisable determination. So reports have to go to the school boards that were participating on the study committee. And then the school boards have until February 1st, 2028 to complete their review and provide comments back to the study committee. This is a process that's in current law. We're just referencing it. Under current law, not referenced here, is the fact that the study committee has ownership over the report and the proposed articles of agreement. So they can get feedback from the school districts, but the school districts can't require them to change anything about the study committee report or proposed articles of agreement. The next step is secretary review. And this is all current, this is the current process. If a study committee determines that it is advisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district, the study committee transmits the report and the proposed articles of agreement to the secretary. That's where current law stops. Current law does not give the secretary a timeline within which to turn around their review. This gives the secretary 60 days or until April 1st, whatever comes first from receipt of the report. And if that 60-day clock runs, or if you hit April 1st, whatever comes first, and the secretary has not completed the review of the report and articles, then the study committee can transmit the report and proposed articles directly to the state board, which would then take action regardless of whether the secretary ever submits a recommendation. Currently, it's the secretary transmits those items to the state board with recommendations. So they only get to the state board after the secretary reviews them. State board findings, the state board is required to sign off on unified union school district formation, under current law.
Can they do anything other than that?
This is a very interesting question. This came up in education, and I'll show you the language. State board. Here's the process the state board has to go through. They have to consider the report and proposed articles of agreement and the secretary's recommendations. They have to provide the study committee an opportunity to be heard. They may ask the secretary or the study committee or both to make further investigation and may consider any other information the state board deems to be pertinent. And the state board may request that the study committee amend the report or the proposed articles of agreement or both. You'll notice there's nothing in there that makes it clear whether the study committee has to. And then if the state board finds that formation of the proposed union school district is in the best interest of the state, students, and the school districts and aligns with the policy set forth in section 701, then it shall approve the study committee's report and proposed articles of agreement and shall give notice of its action to the study committee. Here's what I think is really interesting, because I am a nerd and a lawyer and I don't have to execute this law. The chair of the study committee shall file a copy of the approved final report and proposed articles of agreement with each clerk of the school districts identified as necessary or advisable. Then when we get to the vote, let's see. The vote shall be held on the date specified in the final report. It doesn't say the approved final report. So I think there's a little bit of ambiguity there.
It would be hard if you don't know what exact timeline things are gonna move on to even pick that date in your report if the report isn't going to two different places when it leaves you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the current law, and the current law doesn't give you a prescribed timeline, so.
Do we need to add approved? I mean, it's not a decision, but I think that we
Stealing my thunder.
need to add the approved report. If it's not approved by the State Board of Education, can you really move forward? That's the question.
It is. It is not a legal question. It is not a legal
That's
question.
the real question.
This is all a process you made up.
Okay, so that's something we have to figure out.
Yes.
And really the ed committee, I mean, we should check with them about it because it's a little outside of our. So.
For the sake of moving this conversation along, we're gonna assume that the state board is gonna approve things. State board has issued its findings and that are required under current law, and we're giving them until June 1st, 2028 to do that. It's 6 months from the final date of the report requirement. But there are other steps along the way before you get there. So this is another area, both the secretary review and the state board, where there could be a bottleneck depending on how many things get to the state board and the secretary. Next step in the process is the vote. If a study committee formed pursuant to the section determines that it is advisable to propose formation of a new unified union school district, the voters of each school district, so I would say regardless of whether it was the intent of the education committee, but based on our conversation here and me processing this in real time, I would say this takes the ambiguity off the table for this particular process. If the study committee determines it's advisable, then the voters of each school district shall vote. If there is someone out there who has a different analysis of current law and whether you can move forward without the approval of the state board, and there is a state board non-approval here, then you could have a conflict without any notwithstanding language, so. So the votes all have to happen on or before November 7th, 2028. Study committee status report. On or before February 1st, 2027, AOE in consultation with the facilitators is going to give you a report with the membership of each study committee and the status of each study. They will not have been working for very long at that point, but you would at least have membership.
Interesting that AOE is giving us the report and not the lead facilitator.
Policy choice. Guidance for study committee groupings. Facilitators shall use school district groupings contained in subdivisions 1 through 21 of this section as guidance when forming study committees. They can make different choices that differ from the guidance, but they have to provide rationale for that. That would then be documented in a final report you all get. And then there are 21 groups. Bless you. Do you want to look at the membership of any of the groups? Study committee results and analysis. Facilitator report. I am on page 36, line 1. On or before January 1st, 2029, the lead facilitator shall submit a written report to you all with the results of each study committee overseen by each facilitator and information regarding whether and if so, how the following issues impact or influence the final outcome, along with recommendations for legislative action needed to remove identified barriers to the formation of new union school districts. Differences in staffing costs and costs associated with moving from several different collectively bargained agreements to one collectively bargained agreement. Differences in operating structures, geographic and topographic barriers. I don't know how you come up with a solution to that. Enrollment patterns and projections, and any other factor the facilitator found to have influenced the final decision of a study committee. At the same time, AOE is required, in consultation with the study committees and the state board, to report back to you all with recommendations for supervisory union boundary adjustments and seesaw boundary adjustments to take into account the new union school districts formed or proposed to be formed pursuant to this act.
Before you go on, in the previous page on section 15, about what is standing in their way, did the committee talk about the existing articles of agreement that supervisor unions have?
No, those would not, I mean, so the existing articles of agreement are not an issue legally because your two school districts are coming together and forming a brand new entity. And as part of that process, the two school districts would no longer exist and their articles of agreement would go poof. But the values and the policy choices each of those individual school districts have made that live in their articles of agreement will likely come to a head at the table as you are negotiating what your new articles of agreement are going to contain. But it would be an automatic if you vote to pursue a new school district and the voters agree with you, those old articles of agreement go away.
That could be the point at which one side decides we're not going to merge
Correct.
because you guys want us to close the school, we're not going to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Nine minutes left, and so I'm just saying that out loud.
Just have money left and then perfect
Um,
contingencies.
And folks, we're gonna pick this up again on Monday, 9 to 12 via Zoom. I know not everyone can make it for the whole 9 to 12. If you cannot make it from 9 to 12 and you have not told me yet, please do send me an email over the weekend. If there are particular ways you think it would be helpful for us to organize testimony on Monday and Tuesday, which are essentially just more blocks of time with all the staff, please also let me know that over the weekend. Back to you, Beth.
In the interest of time, I'm just gonna kind of broadly talk about this. So there's a study committee reimbursement grant of $10,000. That's the study committee budget money. It's done in a reimbursement model. This concept is taken directly from Act 153 from 2010. Invoices, you get one half at the time you submit your invoice and then one half when you complete your report. And it's a $10,000 limit for each study committee. And then there's a $210,000 appropriation from the general fund to AOE for that. And that is simply 21 times 10. You may have more study committees than 21. You may have less study committees than 21. Facilitator appropriation, there's 442,000 appropriated from the general fund to the Vermont Learning Collaborative for hiring the facilitators, the 7 facilitators and 1 lead facilitator, and that includes $32,000 for administrative costs. And I believe VLCT has given an estimate of what they're budgeting for each facilitator, which is how we arrived at that number. 50,000 for the regular facilitators and 60 for the lead. And then there's some, because you are appropriating to a non-state government entity, some requirement that they report back to you with some accounting details. There's an executive director grant. So AOE gives each CSA 50 grand.
And we're probably gonna need to rearrange all of this with just like different budget language.
Yep. $50,000 to each CSA that is not currently up and running to go towards hiring an executive director. $300,000 is 50 times 6. And that's it for appropriations in this section. Section 18, I'm on page 39, line 2, amends the effective date section in title in the section. In Act 73, it amends the contingencies for the foundation formula. So it bumps the contingent effective date from July 1, 2028 to July 1, 2030.
Which is 1 year later than the bills left the House last year, if anyone is tracking their timeline negotiations.
And changes the conditions. So new condition is that the clerk of each school district that votes on a proposal to form a new union school district on or before November 7th, pursuant to this act, has certified those results. Second contingency is current law, the 45A report. And then the last two contingencies are new. JFO provides an analysis. And then legislation has been enacted to address a whole host of pieces of the foundation formula, how to account for funding different things.
Much of which is on our delightful whiteboard.
And then pre-K, you've got findings. You've got intent language. And you've got JFO hiring a contractor to do an analysis of pre-K. Within the,
We're gonna spend some time on this section because I think the whole circle amongst committees started because we made a request. And so want to make sure that the base of our request gets met somehow in that study.
okay, do you want me to go into any more detail? Okay. And then that's it, July 1, 2026.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Make more notes. Email the notes, and I'll see everyone on Monday, inside the computer, 9 a.m.